Hi, folks. With Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the capturing of young minds by the propaganda machine through the entertainment industry. So we've seen a lot over the last several years now. How the wokerati have infiltrated and destroyed Star Wars and Star Trek, the Disney movies. I mean, for goodness sakes, they've absolutely hammered the woke socio-political messaging through them, even though nobody wants it. They're very determined to keep on pushing it, and I'll come back and talk a little bit more about where the source of that determination may be coming from. And things like Doctor Who, which is now part of the wider sort of Disney empire. As soon as Disney got their hands on it, they turned that into an insane woke socio-political messaging propaganda machine. Now, it's no secret that these movies, the Ghostbusters, the all-female cast and so on, these these movies have bombed badly and cost Disney or any of the movie production houses, it cost them a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars. Now they're being looked after and compensated and so on through the back room, because the globalist project is to push out propaganda. So they're being supported and given allowances by the Black Rocks, and governments are giving accelerated tax write-offs and so on and so forth, so that the losses are nowhere near as great in reality, as they appear on the face of it. So don't think these movie houses are suffering anywhere near the financial pain that the losses at the box office would suggest, or the low viewership would suggest. So, I mean, looking at, say, the recent Doctor Who, where they've put a black gay Doctor Who into the show, or the latest, most recent series. Now the ratings are, the viewership is well down on what previous seasons have been. I think they're inflating the numbers. I don't think they're getting anywhere near the number of views they claim that they are. But nonetheless, viewership's down. But the response of not only the Doctor Who crowd, but the people who do the other woke, insane woke sort of remakes of brands, well-known brands, is that okay, sure, we've lost the existing fan base. Okay, the older, people over the age of 25 aren't watching it, or over the age of 21 even, but we're getting the young kids. We're getting the 8 to 15 type age range, and we're hitting them, double whammy with the propaganda upon propaganda, socio-political messaging that screams out of the, and so we've got them. So because we're capturing these young minds, then we actually are winning, because we're indoctrinating these young minds, and they will be the the leaders and the citizens of tomorrow that will hate all white people with a passion, straight white people with a passion, and that's what we want. So they're asserting it may not be a financial victory, may not be a viewership victory, but it's a propaganda victory, and so we're happy to claim it, therefore, as a victory in the overall scheme of things. Now, they give the game away, saying that their objective isn't to entertain, their objective isn't to add any value to anything. It isn't even to stand on the shoulders of giants. It is to subvert and pervert and to undermine, to indoctrinate, to deceive. That's the purpose. And because we can't deceive adults, we'll go after the children. I mean, that's pretty scary, actually. Very creepy, very scary. But that seems to be the fallback position. Okay, well, we can't bullshit the adults. They won't sucker for that. But the kids don't know any better. We'll capture them. Now, when you look at how discerning children are of programs that they watch, as long as there's lots of flashing lights and color and movement and so on, younger children will tend to be attracted to it. It may not become a staple of their viewing, but they would tend to. I remember as a kid, I tended to look past for example, say things like, the Liberace is a case in point. For those who don't know, he was a very overtly gay piano player and entertainer. Now, I remember as a kid Liberace being, I mean, these were reruns, I suspect, but being on television, and I don't know, I'm probably 6 or 7 years old or something at this time. And I didn't think about, was he gay or wasn't he? Or, I just thought that was part of his entertainment. He was playing a character because he's on stage and he was just playing a character. And that was it. I didn't think anything beyond that. And I think children tend to see things in much simpler fact. I look at, let's say, cartoons like the Bugs Bunny type cartoons. If you're old enough, you remember Bugs Bunny, the Warner Brothers cartoons. And I used to like watching that as a kid. And there was this rabbit, Bugs Bunny, and yeah, what's up, Doc? And and this sort of thing in an American accent, no less, a New York American accent, no less. And so I used to watch that as a kid, and there was quite a lot of sort of subtle, not overt, but subtle political messaging in it that went straight over my head as a kid. So as a kid, I don't know how much of this propaganda you actually take on board. Must be some, I suppose. I don't know to what extent you're shaped by it, but you don't see the messaging as political, so you absorb it just as it is, rather than seeing it again as whether it be indoctrination or political or socio-political or anything like that. So whereas kids may be watching the black gay Doctor Who dancing in a gay nightclub, would that affect them in a way that the makers of these programs are hoping? I think there's a mismatch here between, if we show it to the kids and push it at them, shove it at them, that will indoctrinate them and convert them. I'm not so sure, actually. A lot of that messaging, there wasn't about gay stuff and woke stuff, but again, the political stuff in Bugs Bunny or other stuff, it went straight over my head. Now, there was, as a kid, I mean, and I don't remember it being discussed or thought about in say, school or things like that. So I don't know if their propaganda campaign is working as they would hope. Now, I'll go to say the Soviet, excuse me, the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, that was under the grip of Soviet ideology, communist Soviet ideology for 40 odd years, 40 plus years, and the Soviet Union for nearly 80 years. So they've had nothing but state propaganda pushed at them through the classroom, on the television. It's compulsory that you attend awareness sort of discussion groups where you're told how evil capitalism is, how you're oppressed, and all this sort of stuff. So this is all compulsory. And if you don't go, it's a bit like during medieval times and the Spanish Inquisition. If you didn't go to church on Sunday, then that someone could allege that you were in league with the devil, and you had to prove you weren't. And it was the same in the communist society. People didn't turn up for the communist awareness, increasing awareness discussion group. Well, you must be a counter-revolutionary. You must be an enemy of the people. So it was very, very much sort of like that ideologically. And yet, when communism, when the Soviet state fell over in 1990, 1991, 2 out of every 3 people, I think more than that, 2 out of every 3 people in the Soviet Union, and even more in Eastern Europe, dismissed communism and the propaganda and the lies as being absolute nonsense. They always knew it was nonsense. They always knew it was bullshit. It was too dangerous to say so or to be seen to be even thinking that. Otherwise, the secret police could be knocking on your door. So in spite of the repression, in spite of endless, just 100% torrent of propaganda, you saw nothing else but that. But in spite of that, people weren't convinced or converted to it. And when Russians started arriving in Australia as immigrants in the early 1990s, even a little bit before that, actually, they laughed at the propaganda and the nonsense they were being peddled. They claim they never believed it. They always knew it was bullshit, even though they had known nothing but that. So you're talking about people who've had nothing but torrents of propaganda pushed at them that didn't believe any of it. The same, it's even more so in Eastern Europe, where they today view communism as a great evil because of the way that they were being brainwashed and treated as enemies of the state if they didn't go along with all the lies and the nonsense, and if they believed their lying eyes. So I don't think it'll be that anywhere near as successful. I think these people, these propagandists, are getting carried away and drunk on the power they have. Look at all these lies we can tell, and we've now got a whole media entertainment landscape to tell our lies, and we've never had that before, and therefore, so it's part revenge. I mean, some of the writers involved in Doctor Who were young homosexuals having homosexual sex at 14 or 15 in gay drama clubs that were set up around the place, and so on. So they channel those sort of thoughts and concerns back in their young teenage selves, and so a lot of what they're doing is really wreaking vengeance on those who they would have perceived at the time as their oppressors. The straight white male is the the oppressor, and we have to get them to rub their noses in. So some of this is, you can't tell me what to do anymore. I'm not afraid of you anymore, and I can tell any amount of lies I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. So there's that type of attitude. Coming now to this thing about we need to understand in the Jewish diaspora, as we know, are very prominent in the entertainment industry, Disney in particular, and based on the James O'Keefe revelations, the undercover videos. If you're not Jewish, and preferably gay, but if you're not a Jewish activist, you can't get a C-level, C-suite job in Disney, and only the brethren can get those jobs, whether it be Bob Iger or Katzenberg or any of them, and so and that would seem about right, certainly based on my observation. So I'm not surprised by that, not in the least. But we need to understand the the Jewish diaspora sort of attitudes to certain things. They very much I'm not Jewish. They're very much caught up in a mindset, and they're schooled and trained and educated. Their literature. This is something that really has a tight grip on many of the members of the Jewish diaspora, even more so when they're outside of Israel rather than when they're into it. But anyway, this idea that we have to, this is if you're Jewish, we have to leave the world a better place than we found it. And this is something of a mantra, really, amongst the Jewish diaspora. Now, on the face, you said, well, there's nothing wrong with that. Gee whiz, you're going to leave the world a better place than you found it. Well, but what does that mean exactly? Does it mean you're going to fill potholes in the road? Does it mean you're going to make sure that the bridges and the overpasses are properly maintained? Does it mean we're going to have clean drinking water and the sewerage system will work? Does it mean we're going to have affordable electricity? Does it mean, what does it mean to leave the world a better place? My version of what made the world a better place and what someone else might be could be different things. Now, the Jews believe, and you can see this very, very much, even when the movie industry first began. So we're going back nearly 100 years now. When the movie industry first began, it was very much something that the Jewish diaspora grasped onto and jumped onto, because this was a way of changing minds, changing attitudes, changing how people understood things. And this was something that Jews in particular were drawn to in a way that others weren't. Others just saw it as entertainment. If I do this movie, will people pay a dime or a nickel or whatever it was back in the day to watch it? But that wasn't how the Jews perceived. Oh, wow, we've got a great opportunity here. Now, it doesn't mean that during, say, wartime, for example, that everybody didn't view the media as a way of communicating and changing minds and affecting minds and attempting to control behaviours and so on. But in terms of socio-political, attitudinal messaging and control and so on. The Jews in particular perceived this was something that they needed to control, and this, through the changing of people's minds, particularly the Christian Gentiles, changing minds, then they would leave, through this effort, would leave the world as a better place. Now, you can see that in the writings of Jewish activists in the very early days of the movie industry. Again, we're going back 100 years now. And you can see it today in the attitude of the Jewish diaspora and if you like, the financial sector, Larry Fink of BlackRock and all that, and the financial sector supporting them, if not directing them, to pump out this very anti-Christian, anti-straight white male message. Now, that's one side of the Jewish education system, and the other side, or included, if you like, in that wider messaging and consideration of messaging, and again, coming back, we're going to leave the world a better place, is that every sort of generation or so, a new Hitler will arrive, or an approximation of Hitler, and it could be a Russian Tsar in the 1880s, or Hitler in the 1930s, or whatever. But every generation or so, a new Hitler is going to arrive, and the mind-changing propaganda delivery system that the Jews have control of can be used to stop that, or prevent it, or limit the damage it could possibly do. And so they see this as very much as a core element of how they must view the world and the steps they need to take to prevent some sort of Armageddon, whether this is a wider Armageddon or one directed only at the Jewish diaspora. It doesn't matter, but it's there, and it's omnipresent, and it's sort of really, I don't think it's much more sophisticated than Little Red Riding Hood in the forest. That you go out in the forest and there are all these wolves are going to rush upon you and eat you, and dress up in granny's clothing and try and eat you, and so on. This is so they've got this fix. In my view, this is my opinion, of course, they've got this fixation with the wolf in the forest, or the Hitler, or is there. It's going to be there. You may not be able to see it. It may not have appeared yet, but it is there, and we have to stop it. But how do you know it's there? It's there. That's it. And so they're preparing for and fighting back against something that doesn't exist, so they have to create this conflict that the Hitler is there. It's there. Okay, you can't see it, but it's there, and we have to fight against something that's not there. So that creating this sort of false conflict against a threat that doesn't exist and may never exist. Now, there are ways to stop a threat from a Hitler or any equivalent of that, and it's to have, for example, scrupulous upholding of due legal process in the courts, the complete independence of the courts. So there are things that can be done that will stop any Hitler straight away, but the Jews unfortunately don't support that. And I've seen Jewish judges personally where they are very much that we take over the legal system and turn it into ideological activism, and this will stop the Hitler coming in because we're in charge, and it's okay if we do it, but if the Hitler people get control of the legal system, then they'll use it, and so again, this strange concept of moral superiority, that's okay if we do it. If we accuse you of being a Nazi, we're allowed to, but if you accuse us of something, then you're Hitler, and so on. So it goes around in some heavy circles there. So this idea of using entertainment to infect young minds, are you putting, from their perspective, are you pushing propaganda at young minds? No, we're stopping a future Hitler, can't you see? And they would see it quite differently. And they would say, not only are they justified, but it's necessary. It's a matter of Jewish survival that we do this. But how do you know there is a Hitler there or one's coming? It doesn't matter. It's in our history. We're taught that from day one in our schools. And this is what we have to do. So while we have this power, we must use it. We must use this power to protect against this future Hitler. Now, there's subsets within that I've spoken about before. For example, it's very important to the Jewish diaspora to be able to instantly move from one country, white Christian country that is, instantly move from one country to another at any time if they choose, any tick of the clock, at any time, for any reason ever. And this is very much built into the Jewish mindset, the activist mindset. And so when a Donald Trump or any politician comes along and says we're going to reduce mass migration and we're going to stop mass migration, we're going to have migration as being skilled only or this only, to that every alarm signal within the Jewish lexicon goes off instantly whenever they hear that, because that means we, the Jews, can't move anywhere at any time, and we're going to need to. We will. Our history has taught us that we need to have that ability to move anywhere at any time. Only to white rich countries, by the way, Christian white rich countries. But we need this ability to move. And any restriction, the tiniest restriction, is the thin end of the wedge. And that means Hitler. That's what it means. It means Hitler. And so there's this overreaction, this insane overreaction to these things. So when we see and look at this idea of propaganda within entertainment and the wokeism and so on and so forth, this is very much or part of, it's not the only thing, part of a wider Jewish gambit, as I see, to create this better world as they perceive it. And this better world has certain basic characteristics, and which, again, are to stop the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood, or, the witch in Hansel and Gretel or whatever. It's very much a fairy tale concept. Now, they would say, well, it's not a fairy tale. Hitler was real. The Russian czars and the pogroms, they were real. So therefore, it's not a fairy tale. Well, no, it was real. Terrible things were done to Christians. The Romans, look at what they did to the Christians. Therefore, all Romans and all Italians must be taken out the fuck back and shot, because look what they did to the Christians. Are you denying they did that to the Christians? Is that what you... So anyone can play that game. You can create this mythical wolf in the forest thing and then pretend that you're fighting against it. And we need to understand this in a much wider sense to understand why things like the propaganda in Doctor Who, the propaganda in Star Wars, because if the white Christian Gentile social powers, the Jewish activists, if this is all broken up and these people have no power in the Jewish cognizance, then they have no power to hurt the Jewish diaspora because their power is all gone. Thus, the world is now a better place. Hey, we've done our job. We have made the world a better place. Now, I may see the world being a better place as quite differently from that. Nobody wants to be persecuted, by the way, just because they're religion or their skin color or something. And nor should that ever be allowed, by the way. And if there was ever an attempt to say, I don't prevent Jews from worshipping in a synagogue, so then, and I was the president, which I will never be, but if I was the president, I would call out the troops to protect that right, because everybody must be exactly equal before the law in independent courts with a scrupulously applied rule of law and due legal process, and that is always will be the best protection for everybody. And the minute we abandon that, thinking a bit of tinkering here and a bit of politicizing there, a bit of ideology over here, the minute we do that, then we're putting all of us in peril, which is, I think, where we are today. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.